Look closely at the screen. You don't hear it coming.
The first thing you notice is that the sun goes out. Not slowly, like a passing cloud, all at once. A massive shadow drops across the dirt like a physical weight. You look up, expecting a storm. Instead, you lock eyes with a towering, 18-foot-tall biological machine. The exact height of a modern African bull giraffe. It stares down at you, unfurls a 40-foot pair of leathery wings, the exact width of an F-16 fighter jet, and violently launches itself into the stratosphere. 66 million years ago, the sky was not safe. While every documentary points your fear at the ground, at the Tyrannosaurus Rex, the true apex-killing machine of the late Cretaceous operated above the clouds, unreachable, undetectable, arriving without warning. Meet Quetzalcoatlus northropi, the largest creature that has ever achieved controlled flight, and the most perfectly engineered aerial weapon system biology has ever produced. But before we witness the utter devastation of its arsenal on the ground, we have to solve an impossible mathematical paradox. Because if you take a towering 18-foot-tall machine of flesh and bone with a 40-foot wingspan, gravity dictates it should instantly crush itself under its own immense weight. How does an airplane made of bone actually fly? To understand Quetzalcoatlus, you have to completely abandon traditional biology and start looking at it through the lens of modern aerospace engineering. If this creature possessed the thick, dense bones of a T-Rex or a Triceratops, it would have weighed thousands of pounds. It would have been permanently, irreversibly anchored to the ground by its own mass. But evolution found a terrifying loophole. Despite having the wingspan of a fighter jet, Quetzalcoatlus only weighed an estimated 500 pounds. It achieved this by utilizing a completely hollow pneumatic skeletal system. The walls of its wing and neck bones were, in some places, just 2 millimeters thick. Scientists initially assumed this made the structure fragile, a hollow shell that would detonate on impact. They were completely wrong. When microscopic imaging revealed the internal architecture of these bones, what engineers found was a flawless matrix of tiny, interlocking bony struts crisscrossing the empty space. This is the exact same complex, load-bearing geometric structure used today inside the wings of supersonic F-22 Raptors and modern carbon fiber racing chassis. Nature had successfully invented a military-grade carbon fiber airframe 66 million years before humans did. It was virtually indestructible against the kinetic forces of flight. But a structurally perfect airframe is completely useless without an engine capable of flying it. Moving a 40-foot wingspan by constant flapping would destroy any heart in minutes. Quetzalcoatlus didn't flap, it glided. It operated as an intercontinental atmospheric dreadnought. It utilized its massive surface area to catch invisible thermal updrafts. Massive columns of warm air rising from the Earth. Once it locked into a thermal current, it could rapidly ascend to an altitude of 15,000 feet with almost zero physical effort. Aerodynamic computer models suggest it could hit burst speeds of up to 80 miles per hour. It could stay airborne for 5 to 7 days straight, traveling over 10,000 miles in a single flight, crossing entire prehistoric oceans without ever touching the ground. It possessed absolute, unchallenged global dominance of the sky. But here is the tactical decision that makes this animal so terrifying. At the peak of its power, at 15,000 feet, beyond the reach of every terrestrial predator alive, it chose to descend. To hunt, this apex predator voluntarily surrendered its ultimate advantage and landed directly in the deadliest war zone on Earth. Forget everything you think you know about flying creatures. When Quetzalcoatlus touched down in the dense forests of Hell Creek, it didn't crawl on its belly like a bat. It transformed. It folded its massive, heavily muscled wings backward, locking the joints into place so they acted as thick, heavy stilts. It walked on 4 limbs. Picture standing in a foggy, prehistoric fern forest. You hear no heavy footsteps. You hear no roaring. You just see a towering, 18-foot-tall biomechanical tripod silently emerging from the mist. Because of its extreme height, it didn't look up at its prey, it looked down on them. Its sleek, aerodynamic profile and grey, leathery skin allowed it to perfectly camouflage against the overcast sky. A ghost in daylight. It was the ultimate terrestrial assassin. But to kill on the ground without the use of deadly claws or slicing teeth, it needed a highly specialized armor-piercing weapon system. When you look at the skull of Quetzalcoatlus, you notice something immediately alarming. It carries 0 teeth. A predator at this scale has no use for chewing. Chewing wastes time. Chewing gives prey a window to fight back. Instead, evolution equipped this monster with a 9-foot-long, solid-bone ballistic spear. When it found its target, it didn't strike sideways. It plunged that 9-foot beak straight downward. The massively muscled neck acted as a hydraulic press, delivering the full kinetic weight of the skull into a single, razor-sharp point like giant biological forceps. Fossil evidence suggests it actively targeted juvenile hadrosaurs, dinosaur calves that grazed with their heads down. Quetzalcoatlus operated from directly above, striking from an angle they were not wired to defend against. The beak locked. The prey was pinned and swallowed perfectly whole. But hunting in Hell Creek carried a catastrophic tactical problem. The forests were shared territory, and the violent commotion of a dying dinosaur attracts the undisputed king of the dirt. If a 9-ton Tyrannosaurus Rex bursts from the trees to steal the kill, how does a 500-pound airplane escape a prehistoric jungle without a runway? For decades, this was the central mechanical mystery of Quetzalcoatlus. Modern birds launch using powerful back leg muscles to jump into the air. Quetzalcoatlus had relatively small, weak hind legs, nowhere near strong enough to vault 500 pounds off the ground fast enough to survive an ambush. If it couldn't leg jump and it couldn't sprint to build speed, how did it launch? The answer is a terrifying maneuver known as the quadrupedal launch. It didn't use its legs, it used its wings. The front arm assembly of this creature housed the densest, most explosive, fast-twitch muscle groups in its entire body. When threatened, it planted its folded wing knuckles directly into the earth and fired them as hydraulic pistons. In one violent, explosive downward strike, it pole vaulted 500 pounds of biology 10 feet vertically into the air in a fraction of a second. It was evolutionary VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing. Before a T-Rex could even close the distance, the wings snapped open and the dreadnought was climbing. Let's see the full system in action. A late afternoon in Hell Creek. A herd of hadrosaurs grazes at the edge of the tree line. They are not looking up. They have no evolutionary reason to look up. A 40-foot shadow sweeps silently across the clearing. Quetzalcoatlus drops from 500 feet. Its massive wings act as flesh and bone air brakes, completely muffling the sound of its landing. The wings fold. The 18-foot silhouette locks upright in the shadows. It moves. Slow. Silent. A juvenile at the herd's edge raises its head 1 second too late. The neck fires. 9 feet of solid bone drops with hydraulic precision. The impact is clean, immediate, and total. The juvenile is tossed backward and swallowed. Suddenly, the herd erupts in panic, and the massive commotion triggers the ultimate nightmare. The tree line violently explodes. A 9-ton adult Tyrannosaurus Rex, drawn by the chaos to scavenge the fresh kill, charges out of the forest, sprinting directly at the grounded flyer. There is no panic. There is only biological perfection. The Quetzalcoatlus plants its massive wing knuckles into the dirt. The quadrupedal catapult detonates. A massive shockwave of kinetic energy blasts the dirt as 500 pounds launches 10 feet straight up. The massive jaws of the T-Rex snap violently shut on completely empty air. The 40-foot leathery wings crack open. One downstroke. The dreadnought catches the wind, vanishing into the overcast clouds, leaving the king of the dinosaurs completely grounded. For millions of years, Quetzalcoatlus owned every sky above every continent. Then, 66 million years ago, a 6-mile-wide asteroid slammed into the Earth. The impact winter that followed choked the atmosphere with ash. The thermal updrafts that powered those 15,000-foot cruising altitudes collapsed as the climate destabilized. The lowland plains that generated the columns of rising air were decimated. The herds of prey vanished. The greatest flying machine that biology ever produced, the Intercontinental Atmospheric Dreadnought that crossed oceans without effort, was permanently decommissioned. Not by a predator, not by a failure of biology, but by a sky that simply no longer worked. The Dreadnought fell, and the clouds it had owned for millions of years closed behind it forever. Quetzalcoatlus was the absolute peak of aerodynamic terror. It proved that in order to survive the prehistoric skies, evolution had to engineer extreme aerospace weaponry. But back on the ground, evolution took a completely different path. It took a peaceful, plant-eating dinosaur and armed it with the most devastating offensive weapons in the history of land biology. I am talking about 3-foot organic scythes attached directly to its hands. If you want to witness the prehistoric meat grinder known as the Therizinosaurus and uncover how its weaponized biology actually worked, click the video on your screen right now. Keep exploring the ancient world and stay primal.